Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app, on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to Off the Floor. Click on the link in the description. You'll get access to 10 different channels on Discord, as well as our stage shows. We're there all day long. We call it the place for the most heat information, conversation, consternation, celebration. Whatever it is you're looking for, you will find it on Off the Floor. Again, you can bypass the Apple upcharge by using the link in the description. Also, check out the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network. Prize Picks, legal in the state of Florida, and they keep adding stuff. Again, you can now flex play. We know that was taken away for a little while. It's back. Use the code 5, play across the sports spectrum. This is our daily fantasy partner. You can use the code 5. You put down $5, you play it. You get 50 to play right away. And now, today's episode.
Mercy, luxurious, Heat Nation, yeah, Mercy and Lago, down to Biscayne, yay, five on the floor, ride for my dogs, where here's the thing, you can check the score, hustle hard, couple scars, wearing rubber frauds, down to Biscayne. Kept the flow playing, got it all band. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, Inspire have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick on Five Reasons Sports. Got Brady Hawk. You can follow him at Brady Hawk 305. Feel like I've been here all day. Just keep changing my shirt. Make sure you check out the other episodes that we put up related to Jimmy Butler's return. Alex Toledo and I went through what we'd like to see, what we might see in the tribute video. Yes, the Heat are doing one. We kind of tipped you off to this on Saturday when I told you on Off the Floor that they were going to take the high road on this entire situation as much as they can. I can also tell you that likely this video is going to be early on, so get to your seats. We know that the seats for this game, it's funny, Brady, I was looking at it. You try to buy a seat to this game in the 100 level, you can't get in for less than 200 plus fees. You look at the Atlanta game 2 nights later and you can get in for 20. I guess people are interested in this one game before the end of the season. We recommend you get there on time, okay? I'm just going to leave it there. This is not going to be done at a timeout in the third quarter. So they're going to do an intro video. Make sure you check out the episode that I did with Alex. Also, I got a chance to sit down with Om Youngmasik. That's the 7th time I've tried this today, and I mispronounce it every time. Om's an old friend of mine. We used to cover the Heat Knicks series together when he was working at the New York's papers back in the late 90s. That's how old we both are. He's with ESPN now, and he has a piece that's coming out on Tuesday morning where he sat down with Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, Steve Kerr, and others about sort of how things are going for Jimmy in Golden State. So if you're interested in that perspective, he talked to Jimmy about that exclusively in New York, and that is going to post on Tuesday morning. But our guy Brady Hawk was at Barry University today in Miami. This has been this weird quirk in the schedule where the Warriors are here as if it's a playoff series. They've been here a couple of days already, and they're obviously here through the game. And Jimmy spoke to the media. I'm not surprised he spoke to the media. I will tell you that of all the places he could have gone to, the Golden State Warriors are one of those teams that their players speak to the media. They're known for that. Steph Curry has set the agenda with that, with as available as he's always been over the years. And Draymond, of course, is not afraid of a quote. So Jimmy sat down. Brady's going to give his 5 takeaways or the 5 things Jimmy said that they're most interesting. And I've seen some of these. He's posted them. Follow him at Brady Hawk 305. Also put them on Off the Floor, but we will go through them and I'll give you my response to each of them. So Brady, number 1.
Yeah, I'm going to say the first one quickly just because I know you guys did an entire podcast on it, but it has to be one of them is where he brought up the tribute video where he was just basically asked if he would watch it. He was, quote, would I watch? Yeah, I'd watch. But the quote didn't end there. I mean, like that, yeah, like that would have been fine. He could have just said that and moved on. But then at the end, he threw in like, if they have one, if they don't, makes no difference. Where for a good amount of time here, there's been a conversation if he would get one. Like now we know that it's going to be early on before the game, as you were just mentioning, like we know what it's going to be. It kind of sets the tone for the game, honestly, to me. Like if even if it went, and I know you guys probably touched on some of this, but like even if they did it, has some teams do it where they do it like a timeout, like in the first quarter or something, it just there's a little bit of I don't know. This just kind of sets the tone of the game to me, like for Jimmy and for a lot of the emotions. It feels like with the fan base and how they react to Jimmy and all that stuff. But him saying like if they have one, if they don't, it makes no difference. I mean, I think him saying that is like he didn't know if he'd get one for sure. And honestly, even though he always acts like he doesn't care, he probably doesn't. I really don't think he does care, just with the way things ended. I think he'll take it well. I think the fans will embrace it. Probably, we talk about what percentage will be boos, what percentage will be cheers. As I kind of pointed out before, it's like, especially a lot of these games. First of all, there's going to be a lot of Warriors fans there. Steph
Yes.
draws an
Yes.
insane amount of crowd, and
Yes.
even though Steph was up in the air, people already buy their tickets even if he doesn't play.
Yep.
So that's in it itself. And then there's the portion of Heat fans in the lower bowl that are just casual viewers that see their franchise guy of the past back in the building and stayed up and cheer. And then there's just the fans that are involved and know what's going on, but respect what Jimmy has done, for the franchise. So that's, I feel like, how it's broken down in terms of how he's going to get cheered. I there's going to be a portion of some boos, like, but I don't think it's going to be overwhelming at all. I think it's going to be probably 80%, 85%, embracing with cheers. And I'm sure he'll take it well, and then the game will go on and we'll see what happens from there. But I just thought the first kind of interesting quote was just him saying, just throwing in that it makes no difference kind of thing.
He always has to say the contrarian thing. We got used to that in Miami, and act like he doesn't care. I can tell you he does care. Based on the way that he's acted over this period of time and not feeling wanted, which is something that he's talked about repeatedly. He does care. I know that there was a player that he was close to, you know who I'm talking about, who didn't get a tribute video when he came back and was kind of upset about it, mentioned it to me in the locker room afterwards. And the rule supposedly, and Anthony Chang of the Herald has tweeted this one out, is that it's for players who've won championships or have been all-stars, in which case Jimmy does qualify. They did one for Bron, okay, won championships. Obviously, they did one for Dwayne. You were asking me before the game, and I forgot I was there. What happened the night that Dwayne came back with Chicago? And of course, a little different circumstance there. He came back with Chicago in 2017. The Heat lost that game. Hassan Whiteside had 20 and 20, but the Heat lost. Dwayne didn't play particularly well. The leading scorer for the Chicago Bulls was Jimmy Butler, by the way, with Chicago. So he's been through this before with Dwayne. And remember, one of the things that he liked about the Heat originally was the way they welcomed Dwayne back. Remember that? And all of that was surrounded with that. But of course, the circumstances with Dwayne were a lot different. I expect it to happen during introductions. I will be curious to see if Jimmy is introduced first or last. Because remember, they're going to be introduced before the Heat are. If they introduce him first, I'm telling you, Brady, there's going to be cheers. I think the majority of the fan base. Now, there are some in the lower bowl that don't know he's been traded, so they're going to be a little. But those who can afford the upstairs tickets, because again, these have been circulating on the secondary market. I believe most of them are going to cheer him on the video, and the video is going to stir those emotions. People who are doing it, they know what they're doing. The Heat do a really good job with that in-house entertainment stuff, and so that it's going to be emotional. There's no question about it. Alex and I got into some what's happening there. If they do it first, then other players are going to be waiting around for them to introduce them, including Steph, right? Typically, like when Mike Biamani introduces the opposing players, it's like Jimmy Butler. And that's what he's going to do during the game when he scores. But in that instance, he's going to introduce him like he always has. So I'm curious to be first or last. The Heat will be waiting around for it. And you and I will be watching, as will Alex, will be at the game to see what Heat players do during it. I'll be curious to see which Heat players are giving very loud applause and which of them are not. I think that they'll all be respectful, but we know that by the end, there weren't a whole lot of allies in that locker room. There were a couple that we know of, and one of them has been injured for 4 weeks. So I'll be curious to see how that plays out there, at that situation. But I'll tell you this, afterwards, I would expect him to get booed when he touches the ball, because that has been what's happened to other players, even those who have not kind of created the strife that Jimmy did at the end. I think where it goes from there depends on how the game's going.
Yeah.
Because if the Heat are getting blown out, you mention it. The Warriors always bring fans there. And I also recommend you getting there early, because Steph puts on a show pregame. He doesn't hide. He's out there. He's shooting from the tunnels. The Steph Curry experience is worth going to, and we do expect him to play at this point, even if Jimmy wasn't there. A lot of Warriors fans, obviously, they built up a huge fan base with their championship runs. So I am uh, if the Heat are getting blown out, Jimmy's gonna get more cheers, simply because Heat fans will have thinned out by then, and the Warriors fans will stay. If the Heat are competitive in the game, as they were every time LeBron came back and beat him most of the time, I think the boos for Jimmy will get louder, particularly at the line late in the game. All right, let's get to number 2.
So I will stay on the topic of the fans, where he was basically asked, like, just straight on his thoughts on some groupings of the fan base that have disdain against him with the way these things have played out. Where he said, "I wonder if they look at the Heat the same way. It ain't like I was the only one doing everything. It's got to be 50-50, maybe 51-49, the 51 towards me. But there's no way I was the cause of all this." So this is a case where this is like a very specific Jimmy type quote, where he almost does take responsibility. Like he takes he takes more than half of the responsibility for a second, but then kind of like it's in the middle. Like he starts it out by like putting it on what he really feels. In the middle, he'll kind of put it on himself, because that's what he does to kind of give the media answer. And then he wraps it up with kind of but there's no way I was the cause of all this, where just pretty much saying, obviously, that as much as he is to blame, so would be, the rest of the team, the front office, the coaching staff, whatever it may be. So, but I will say, I mean, this question was about the fans, and I mean, there has been disdain about the other elements of it. Like him, like at this, I don't think there's just been a pure disdain of just what Jimmy was doing. I mean, I think all fans have been, nearsighted in terms of saying what needed to be done around him, or what the roster needs to be done. But at this point, after he's moved, like now we're past it now. Like now it doesn't really matter. But I guess at the time, I feel like Jimmy got as much. Like I feel like there was just as many fans on Jimmy's side as the Heat side. Like I feel like everybody was pretty split among that.
It was split 50-50 until the way he acted at the end. I think that a lot of fans, and they still exist, okay, but we poll these things regularly on Twitter, social media, etc. And I know that, and it's pointed out to me all the time by the Heat, that Heat social media, Heat Twitter is not their broader fan base. And I've talked about this with Greg, that we sometimes it's a very loud minority. Okay, that's on Twitter all day long. I'm always surprised when we go to games and they're like, "Oh, we listen to Five on the Floor. Alex needs to fix his helicopters, or say hey to Brady, or whatever." And I'm like, "You guys are you on Twitter?" And they're like, "No." And I'm like, "Well, how do you listen to us?" Simply because we are so accustomed to being in that space. So it's like that very loud minority. Even among that loud minority, okay, it flipped against Jimmy. And I know some are blaming us for that, the way this was reported. I was trying to report what I was hearing. I spoke to both sides of the situation throughout. And I think where it flipped, honestly, was where Jimmy quit and turned on Spo. I feel like before that, there was at least half of the fan base, or somewhere around there, that was kind of took the perspective of they didn't get him enough help, okay, and maybe they should have paid him. Now, some of them are saying now, with the way he's performing, they should have paid him. But in some ways, you could say yes, and in some ways, you could say he's kind of made the Heat's argument. Like if you get an elite player around him who takes the pressure off, he can score 16, 17 points a game. And right now, he's shooting 44% with Golden State. He's 10% percentage points down, and still win. They didn't have a Steph Curry. He can be a number 2 with Golden State, which is, and Golden State's going to pay him like a number 1, because they're trying to maximize Steph and Draymond's window. The Heat were not in position to do that. At least they didn't believe so. So I think with the fan base, I think the way that you look at it is, I think that half and half before, I think when he threw Spo under the bus, I saw a big turn there, and I would say even among those on Twitter, I think it's still 3-1 that, and the polls have suggested that we've done them, not that they're scientific, but 3-1 are mostly on the Heat side in the way that things went down at the end. Is that fair from those that you talked to?
100% fair, and I think even more than throwing Spo under the bus, it's if he said he wanted out, and he sat out, I think it would be taken better than playing the games and not trying. Like I honestly think that is what hurt, his case more than anything was like thinking about that 2-game stretch against Indiana and New Orleans where he was just kind of out there and he just didn't care. Like there was like he could say he was going through the motions and defending and doing certain stuff, and then obviously that's what led to him blaming Spo about being in the corner. But it was like there was just a pure sense of just giving up on the team that he's been with for 5 years. Like there's one thing to be mad at certain parties, but the team that's been in the trenches with you, the coach that has been with you for this long, and just kind of leaving them in the dust like that. I think that was kind of the part that just pushed them in that direction. But I'll go to the next one because it kind of plays off this, which is he was asked, like, I was just kind of curious because I think we knew what most of his answers would be. I think everybody kind of knows what he's been saying the same stuff over and over. Nothing's really changing. But he was asked if, like, this is kind of a hypothetical, if things could have worked out better if Pat and him sat down after last season when he was offered the extension. So, like, right after coming off the injury in May after the play-in, and he just said no. And he was kind of re-asked, Ira, like, kind of doubled up, and he was like, so you felt like there was a point of no return, like, back then in May? And he was just like, yeah, pretty much. Like, he just kind of made it sound like, I don't know. It's just like all the things that were said on those months in between in the summer at media day, all the things in between. And there was just a sense that he said, like, he pretty much knew where he was going to end up at that point. Like there was a sense of moving on. And that part is just strange to me. Like when you talk about being like upfront about things, like that one just felt like either he's making things up now or he was making things up then, because one or the other, because things aren't lining up here. That one was just pretty strange to figure out. And I think, once again, a lot of these quotes have been reused based on the teams that he's gotten to the next time. He's talked about the last team. Like this stuff happens, so we get it. But I think a lot of people in Miami, when he was talking about retiring here, thought this would be a little bit different. But yeah, I don't know how that could have played out any differently. That this whole thing has seemed to be about the extension. Like we could say it was about the roster or getting up. But it was about the money. It was about the extension. He's made it clear in the past that he wanted the extension. He wanted the respect that came with the extension. And the fact that he's kind of saying, like, if the one thing he did want, if he sat down with it, if it would have changed things, he's saying no. The only thing I could say to that is, the only thing that happened in between there that could have changed anything was the Pat Riley press conference, where he came out and said about kind of keeping his mouth closed and doing all that stuff. Unless that moment when he heard that, he said, I'm done here. Like if that was like the final, maybe that's the only answer I could come up with, because other than that, I felt like the extension was the only thing that we've been talking about this whole time.
It was the combination of the two things. It was the not getting the money and then Pat doubling down at the press conference on why he wasn't giving him the money. It was those two things. And that's why I kept saying on every platform, this is about the money. He can talk, we can get into the whole thing of role and teammates and chance to win. And I do think those things aided him. But the issue with role was that he went to training camp in the Bahamas, and I was there, okay, and he spoke on the first day of training camp, and remember he arrived late to media day, and everybody made a big deal of that, and then he did he spoke to the media when he got there at media day. Then they went to the Bahamas, and we were all celebrating him for not coming in with crazy hair, which we know pissed Pat off the year before with the emo Jimmy thing, and like Jimmy immediately was contrarian in the Bahamas. Like they had like 6 of us around him, and he's like, nah, I had something planned. I just didn't get to it. I'll use it another time. We're like, okay, well, so nothing's really changed here. And it was actually that day, the very first day, and I didn't find out until later, that he called his agent and was like, I don't know what they're doing with the offense. Okay. Like I don't, and I know his agent said to him at the time, just let it play out. Okay. Or at least that's the way it was put to me. And then there were different times during the first half of Jimmy's time that he was still here that they thought they'd sorted that out a little bit. But I have always felt that his issue about role was tied to the money. It was, they're not making me the number one option anymore. It's another excuse for them not to pay me or for somebody else not to pay me. He ended up getting what he wanted anyway. He got the contract extension. He just got it for a team from a team that was better positioned to give it to him. And as Alex and I talked about all the way back on December 6th, we thought Golden State, before all this blew up, we thought Golden State was the best option for him because they would try to get somebody for Steph, and that Jimmy made sense. It's funny how it worked out because he wasn't really supposed to go to Golden State. They really didn't want him. They wanted KD. The Heat found out about that throughout the process and then ended up circling back to Golden State. And Kerr was basically convinced to do it by ownership and Mike Dunleavy Jr. So it's funny how it all worked out, but it worked out for Jimmy for the best. But as far as the money thing, do I believe that if Pat had sat down and said, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said all those things. Here's your money. Do I believe that he would have gotten it? He would have been okay at that point? Probably. But I think the combination of Pat saying that after not giving him the money, and then we also saw on draft night, Bam got his extension. The report came out from Shams that night that Jimmy would not be signing an extension under any circumstances. I still don't think that was coincidence. All right, we're going to get to your last two things here. Before we do, I want to mention another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. He'll help you get your money if you have a car accident. Our guy, Eric Rubenstein, you can find him at ericrubenstein.com, 877-829-ERIC. That's 877-829-ERIC, E-R-I-C. Went to St. Thomas University, graduated magna cum laude, grew up in Lauderhill in Broward County. But the biggest thing is he is the best at what he does. Follow him on Attorney Rubenstein on Instagram. Trust me, you shall be entertained. But then he gets down to business as well. So check it out, ericrubenstein.com, again, or 877-829-ERIC. All right, Brady, get to number 4.
Yeah, I'm just gonna throw this quote at you because this is one that I feel like we've heard many times in the past, like pretty exact, where he was just pretty much asked about being the bad guy, and he was like, I'm always painted as the bad guy. Everywhere I've been, I'm always the problem. And he went on kind of more about just that whole he doesn't mind kind of being the villain kind of thing. But like we've heard all this before. It's fine. We were joking around earlier, like this is kind of even in terms of him talking to media today, it's like kind of the honeymoon phase with the new team. So it's like, yeah, he's going to do a lot of the stuff that happened at the beginning of the Miami tenure when everything was kind of at its best. Yeah, I don't really know. In terms of Miami's perspective, I don't know how you take this. I mean, there's no new information here. They know how he is, what he is. I just think the thing that's interesting about this, because yes, he could say he's painted as the bad guy and he's kind of going as the villain. And they were comparing it, like Steve Kerr was talking about how great the Kevin Durant return was with OKC when he was with Golden State. The difference with this is Durant going into OKC, I really do think he has the mindset of I'm going to go score, I'm going to go off. I don't think Jimmy has that mindset in a game like this. And the reason I say that is people have asked me, like, how do you think this game's going to go? Do you think is Jimmy going for 40? Like, how is this going to play out? And my opinion is, I think he gets double-digit assists. I think he goes out there and he just has the time of his life where every time you look at him, he's smiling and just trying to show you that he's happy where he is now, and just the overall trolling and everything. But I think specifically, I just think he's going to try to just win the game and just try to overly pass. He doesn't want the spotlight of going to show you I can drop 35. I mean, Miami knows he could go drop 35. Nothing's new there. But I am curious to see how he treats the game. He could say it's like every other game. I know Miami's guys have said it's like every other game. But there's a reason. Steve Kerr even mentioned today, because Steph coming back, I mean, they wouldn't rush him back for a game that a team that's coming off a 10-game losing streak. They wouldn't rush their star back with a back injury back. But he mentioned Steph wants to be out there for Jimmy. Like, this is a big game for Jimmy. And I feel like those guys are, Miami's side and Jimmy specifically won't recognize or mention, at least to the public, that this is a big deal or a big game. But the fans know it. The others around Jimmy and the Warriors side know it. I feel like everybody kind of can read the room on this. So I'm interested to see the way he plays. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he does try to go out and score and do stuff. But I see a passive type Jimmy, where he just has like a double-double and just kind of plays an all-around game. And, just like I said, I think the biggest thing, he's going to be just having the time of his life, just say like, oh, I'm happy over here. We're trying to make a playoff run over here. I think that's kind of be the statement he tries to make.
I don't think he's going to be passive on defense. I agree with you on offense. I think he's going to be setting other guys up. This is going to be like Jimmy in Minnesota. I'll take any guys that are out there with me and try to compete. I think he's going to try to lock up certain guys on defense. I think Tyler, I wouldn't be surprised, not that he's going to have the ball a lot, but if Haywood's out there, I do think that he'll show him some special attention. I think Duncan, and I'm curious to see how things play out with Bam. That's the one that I'm watching. I think there'll be a little bit of a fist bump at the start, maybe a hug. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot else, honestly. There were, without getting into too deep, there were a lot of things said by people around Jimmy that if I'm sure Bam's on social media, he's seen him. I wouldn't be thrilled with a lot of the stuff that was out there during this period of time, and I'm curious to see how that plays out. I wouldn't be surprised if there are some in the Heat locker room that want to win for Bam. We'll see. I think that could be the flip side of this, but I don't. I don't think he's scoring. I wouldn't play him over on Prize Picks. I'll just put it that way. I'm not on the points. I play him over on the other stuff. It's not the way he wants to show he has to win. And to be honest, it hasn't been his role in Golden State. I can see him getting to the line a lot late, closing the game for them. But I'm not expecting it. Look, LeBron, when he came back, a lot of times he did set up his teammates. He would play it both ways, kind of. And again, when LeBron came back, all due respect to Jimmy, who's still a very good player, LeBron was still top of the league, top of his game, could do pretty much anything he wanted. I don't think Jimmy's at the stage now where he could just decide. I think that he's going to go in with a certain emphasis and he'll kind of take what's given to him. But I wouldn't play him over 30 points. I wouldn't. I may end up being wrong about that. We'll clip it. But I think if you want to play him over 7.5 assists, I think you got something there. All right, what's your fifth one?
So I'm gonna mention something I asked him where I basically asked him not, he's been on the same side as many of these guys. I wanted to ask about specific matchups, like if there's any matchups he's looking forward to against Miami. It's playing off with the things you're mentioning. And some people were kind of asking, like, what did you think he was going to say here? But there's a reason to this because he didn't say anything. He said, I know those guys know me. It's a team game. If I drive, they're going to help. I'm just playing basketball. And he kind of at the end of the answer, he gave like a big smirk. But the reason I say this is like, I'd have to go back and look at other teams he's left. But like when he left Philadelphia, let's say, and he was returning to Philadelphia, I think he would name drop Joel because he was, good friends with him. And he'd say, I'm going to go at Joel or I'm going to go at this guy. He didn't name drop anybody. And I just think the reason I'm mentioning that is because if he has a decent relationship with some of these guys that you're mentioning, whether it's in a joking manner or not, I think he would bring them up. Like if there's no reason if he had a decent relationship where he could say, yeah, I just want to go guard Tyler. I want to go do that. Or like different things he could say, but he didn't say anything. And I just think that there's a certain level here where both sides want to get a win. I really do believe that. And as much as Jimmy has downplayed it, I asked Tyler about it yesterday after the game, and he extremely downplayed it. They're all calling it another game. Miami's saying they have bigger things to worry about. Jimmy's saying it's, them just, another game in the schedule. Like I just said, I really do think there is more to this. There's some personality stuff that's going to be mixed in. I do think, like you said, I think there's going to be the initial greetings, like especially following the tribute, there being that type of the feelings mixed in right after that, and they'll kind of greet before the game. During the game, I think it's going to be anything goes. And then I think after the game, there's going to be the embrace between Jimmy and Tyler and Jimmy and Bam, and you're going to see those clips are going to go viral. So as much as we're I'm making these points about like them specifically, because this is the truth about what's really going on. I do think there's going to be like a 3-second clip of them embracing with Bam and Tyler. And then everybody's going to just clip that, and everybody on social media is going to be like, man, what we had. And it's going to be kind of looking back on it, and it's going to tie the whole thing together. That's just my prediction on how this is going to go, but maybe not. Maybe there is a Duncan and Jimmy brawl in the second quarter. Who knows?
I don't think there'll be a brawl, but a couple of things to just point out here. One is Tyler downplays everything when it actually means something to him. I remember the night before the All-Star announcement, I'm not even thinking about that. And then we saw the video of him getting announced and pacing and all of that stuff. So I'm not taking any of that into consideration. So something else to consider here, though. Andrew Wiggins was really well liked by his Golden State teammates. That's not going to be the focus here, but the man did win a championship with them as a top 3 player on that team. And people are not going to pay attention to it, but when you're going to see the hugs after the game, you're going to see Kerr with him, you're going to see Curry with him. Again, that locker room, did not like losing him. Now, again, they've gained something in Jimmy that's a little bit different. But watch that also. I think that we're focusing so much about Jimmy, and it's not Wiggins going back to Golden State. They've already played there this year, or the Heat have. So they're not. It's not going to happen this year. But
Steve
that's
Kerr
something we
mentioned
really
that, by
haven't.
the way. He was like,
Mhm.
he went on like a 2-minute tangent where he was like, I really wish that game was, we still had a game in Golden State because of how much they want to honor Wiggins, just for who he is as a person, what he's done for the team, being a champion, all that stuff. And they were really pushing that. Uh they're like very big Andrew Wiggins. Like Steve Kerr
Yes.
specifically has said multiple
Mhm.
times, like he's like the favorite player, his favorite player he's ever coached, who's coached some like Steph Curry,
And
Kevin
Brady,
Durant
he's
types.
coming off a 30 and a 42-point game. Like, I know it was
Hmm.
a slow start here, and he's missed
Hmm.
some time, and we still have to figure out what the role is they do long term. But he's playing at his highest level than he has with the Heat, and it reminds me a little bit because I made this comparison before. When Luol Deng came to Miami, he always had big games against LeBron's teams when he came back. And remember, Lou kind of replaced LeBron. Pat made a big deal about the biggest signing ever. We've been talking about a lot about Hero and Bam. It's going to be Wiggins guarding Jimmy. And it may be
Yeah.
Wiggins
Hmm.
for a lot of this game, and it may be Wiggins that is getting going on things. And just because Wiggins is a quiet guy, and we know he is, he's got to feel something here. I would think. Like, he was a champion with them. They parted with him to get better, and they've gotten better. And he's lost a lot since he's come to Miami. If I was to play anybody over in this game, I'd play Wiggins on the Heat side. I think that's the guy. Tyler, I don't know. I will see if he gets in his head at all or everything that's going on, because he kind of became the number one option when Jimmy left. Bam, I don't know where that's at. We talked about how Bam started to play better after Jimmy was traded. Wiggins is the guy I think could have the big night in this game for Miami.
100%. I could totally see that. A lot of people have been talking about the fact that he'll be guarding Jimmy. The thing is, so I asked Spo last night about like the Davion Haywood combination because he's kind of linked. He was talking about how they were both starters and now they've kind of found their role off the bench. They play well together and all that stuff. The reason I bring that up, uh, Duncan's kind of been the starter. I think is going to be the starter in this new starting lineup. I know they had Jaime in there for a little bit. I think he was just a placeholder. The reason I bring this up is if they do go to Tyler Duncan, Wiggins, Bam, Ware, you kind of have to put Wiggins on Steph. Like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way this lineup is kind of pushing you in that direction. And now Bam's guarding Jimmy. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't think it's ridiculous. We know he's going to guard him on many possessions, but I'm saying out the gate, I know it makes the most sense to just put Tyler on Steph, I guess, and put Wiggins on Jimmy and go down the line the correct
Mm-hmm.
way. And maybe they just put Bam on Draymond and have him help off. That's probably the easiest thing they probably do to start. But I'm interested in that. I'm interested to see because I do think there's a way they can move things around where Bam is guarding Jimmy. And lastly, I'll ask you: we're talking about different, relationship things of the way these guys are looking at each other. Do you think Jimmy is looking at Wiggins any type of way on the other side, wearing his number 22? Like, do you think there's anything that, like, when it's just funny, like, thinking about you bringing up Wiggins,
Well,
like,
there's
he's sitting
more
there looking
to it.
across the line.
Well, there's more to it because they have a pre-existing relationship. It'd be one thing if they
Mhm.
just gave 22 to anybody who came in, that would be enough. But they played together in Minnesota, and look, there was always this kind of mixed reporting on their relationship there. It became clearer later on that the issue for Jimmy was really Towns, but Wiggins was the number one overall pick. Jimmy has this history of not getting along with those top picks. He likes more the he has this another contradiction of Jimmy is he likes these guys like Strus that came out of the mud, but then he wanted more talent around him too, which a lot of times you got to draft those guys early. But I don't know. He and Wiggins, you could not be more different personalities. Like they could not, and they know each other. And that's a very interesting part of this to me because one of the reasons they went out and got Andrew Wiggins was because from a personality standpoint, he wasn't Jimmy, and they just didn't want to deal with the circus that comes with Jimmy behind the scenes anymore. Again, if he wasn't going to be playing at the high level that he was previously, so the fact that Wiggins is like the nicest guy on earth and the easiest to deal with, I- like there's a lot of subplots here. But Brady, I'll say this: as subplots go, this is a big story because there haven't been a lot of big stories to cover. But compared to LeBron coming back, compared to the Heat Knicks
Mhm.
series where everybody hated each other on down the line, the Heat have been through this kind of thing before. Spo has too, and I think he'll get them up for this game. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they win this one and lose to the Hawks by 25. All right, Brady, appreciate you going out to the practice today. Again, thanks to our sponsors, EricRubenstein.com. Prize Picks, use the code 5FIVE. Different perspectives on this, so we're bringing in lots of different people. Make sure you listen to all the episodes and subscribe. Thank you.